Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, Thursday, October the 8th here, presented by Pub Sports Radio. I'm Ian Cameron. Thank you for joining me once again for another Thursday Ian Cameron Football Frenzy. Looking forward to the show, breaking down the entire, as we do each and every Thursday, breaking down every NFL game on the upcoming week slate, week 5 now of the NFL season. Hard to believe, isn't it? Week 5 already. We're a month into the season. We're already starting to see teams, who looks good, who doesn't look good, which teams may be for real, which teams may be legit Super Bowl contenders, and which teams may be pretenders. So we're already starting to find out a lot about these teams. If you watched last Thursday's show, I don't like to toot my own horn too many times, but it was a very good week for me in the NFL last week. I mean, with the official card that I send out to subscribers, it was a very, very good week in the NFL last week. We went 7-2 on Sunday. It was a really strong week. I gave out a lot of those leans that I ended up pulling the trigger and betting. I gave out a lot of those leans last Thursday right here on this show. And I know a lot of the leans that I mentioned on last Thursday's show did quite well. We liked, what did we like? We liked Cincinnati. We liked the over in that game. We liked the over in a couple of those games last week. Buffalo, Las Vegas. That game ended up going over the total. I liked the Cleveland Browns last week, plus the points. They won outright. But it was a really good week overall. That's why tune into this show. Let's get it rolling here in this case. So definitely a situation where it was a good NFL week. Hopefully we can keep it going. Someone in the chat asking the mystery guest. We got to push the mystery guest back to next week. He had some conflicts that couldn't make the show this week, so we're going to push it back to next week. That and the fact that I have an appointment actually just after 2 o'clock Eastern time. So this show is going to be a little bit shorter. We are going to get through every game, but I'm going to go really, really fast through each game. It's just one of those weeks where, unfortunately, I had an appointment from months ago set for this Thursday afternoon. So, but we're still going to go through every NFL game and a couple of college games at the end. So let's get right down to business here with the NFL Week 5 card. Start with Thursday Night Football tonight. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Chicago Bears. Fascinating line movement here in this game. Tampa Bay was a 3-point favorite, bet all the way up to 5.5 point favorites on the road. And then bet back down again as Chicago money has really come in strong the last couple days and has settled in now. Tampa Bay as just a 3-point road favorite, 3.5 in other spots. The total 44.5 in this game. I thought early in the week I'd be making a case to bet Tampa Bay here in this game, and I'd probably have a slight lean to the Bucs, but this is not a game I'm involved in, this Thursday night game. Although maybe, again, maybe you want to bet the lean that I have toward Tampa Bay, because I had a lean toward Denver last week on Thursday Night Football. I said right on the show last week, I had no interest betting that horrible game, but I did lean to Denver because I said you just cannot trust the Jets as a favorite, and Denver ends up getting the win. I still lean to Tampa Bay because I don't know what I'm going to get from the Chicago Bears on offense. I mean, Nick Foles clearly last Sunday in the loss at home against the Indianapolis Colts. That was not the answer clearly to their offensive woes. It was a situation for me where the offense just didn't work. I mean, you weren't seeing receivers get open. The offensive line really had a trouble against, I think, a very good Colts defensive front. Keeping Nick Foles clean was an issue throughout that game. And even when Nick Foles did have time, inaccurate, couple drop passes, but some inaccurate throws, threw a couple balls behind his intended receivers. So just not a really good offensive game against a really good Colts defense, though. I think we're finding out here early in this season, Indianapolis could have a pretty good defense this year. So maybe there's an opening here for Nick Foles to improve. He probably can't get any worse than what we saw from him and the Bears on the offensive side of the football last Sunday against the Colts. For Tampa Bay, though, what got me off backing Tampa Bay here is the fact that they are just littered with injuries on the offensive side of the football. It's not a pretty injury report for the Bucs heading into this Thursday night game tonight. You've got O.J. Howard and Chris Godwin out. You got Mike Evans banged up and questionable. I think he's going to play, but is he going to be 100%? It sure didn't look like it last week against the Chargers. And Scotty Miller has also ended up on the injury report with hip and groin problems. And this is a guy that if you've read anything out of Tampa Bay and their and training camp and their practices and the beat writers from Tampa Bay, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, they can't say enough positives about Scotty Miller and the chemistry that he's developed in this passing game here with Tom Brady. So again, you're talking about a very, very banged up, injury-plagued offense going into this game here tonight against the Chicago Bears. That's absolutely a worry for me. And the Chicago defense against a banged-up offense, the Chicago defense is still capable. We know that, capable of getting a pass rush, capable against the run as well. So that's what worries me here for the Bucs here is just so many pieces missing from this offense. And the spot's not great. They're traveling on the road on a short week, and you look at the Bucs' road results so far. They lost to New Orleans, and the other road game was against Denver, a banged up, injury-riddled Denver team with Jeff Driscoll at quarterback for that contest. And Jeff Driscoll was terrible in that football game, and there's a reason that the Denver Broncos ended up going to Brett Rippon the next week against the New York Jets, because that's how bad things were for Driscoll, although he did get hurt as well. But nevertheless, Driscoll was terrible, and Tampa Bay took advantage of that. So is this team proven enough, on the road where we can trust them as road favorites? I probably have a little bit more trust in them just because you got Tom Brady over against Nick. Although saying that, we remember Nick Foles beating Tom Brady in the Super Bowl with the Eagles a few years ago, but different situation. I think better offense and better situation around him than he's got here with Chicago. Really, really tough game. I think at 3.5, I definitely would have a lean toward the Bucs here, but they really are banged up on offense and on a short week, and they haven't exactly proven themselves consistently on the road. I don't think beating Denver on the road with their third-string quarterback is the kind of evidence that I need to have faith in them laying points on the road here tonight. So it's a lean to Tampa Bay, but it's not a game I'm going to have any betting involvement in. Sunday, let's go to the Sunday card now, moving on down the card. By the way, we're going to end up going with in rotation order as we always do. So we start at the top of the rotation for Sunday, October the 11th. Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons, NFC South battle here. Atlanta 1 to 2 point home favorites, 54.5 the total here in this game between the Panthers and the Falcons. How can you lay points with Atlanta right now? How can anybody actually say, yeah, Atlanta's favored, I'm backing them at this point in time? There's nothing to like with the Falcons right now. Their defense, you talk about injury reports that are scary. If you thought the Bucs on offense, that injury report was hideous and scary and just made you go, oh my God, how the hell is this team going to put together enough bodies on the field to compete? If you think that was bad with the Bucs offense, look at the Falcons defense going into look at their secondary. I mean, it is absolutely insane how many injuries right now the Atlanta Falcons are dealing with on the defensive side of the football. It is rough. I mean, they've got so many key cogs in that secondary that are either doubtful or out for this game on Sunday against the Carolina Panthers. Of course, they incurred another couple of injuries in the Monday night game against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, you look at this team, Darqueze Dennard, secondary, out. Jalen Hawkins, concussion, questionable. DeMonte KZ, Achilles, on injured reserve. Keanu Neal, the safety, hamstring injury. He missed the last game. I have doubts he's returning. AJ Terrell, a starting cornerback. He's now out indefinitely and sidelined. So it is just an absolute horror show for the Falcons on defense. And plus the defensive front's got some injuries as well. Marlon Davidson, Tack McKinley, Grady Jarrett. They're all questionable to suit up for this game. So this Falcons defense is just absolutely in shambles. To be honest with you, even when they are fully healthy, they're not a very good defense. So now you've got all these bodies out, and you're seeing the effect. They can't stop anything right now. This Falcons team, Dallas moved the ball against them. Obviously, Green Bay shredded them. And the same Bears offense with Nick Foles at quarterback that couldn't move the ball or much at all against Indy last week. All they did was just shred this Atlanta defense a couple weeks ago, the Bears. So this is an Atlanta defense that's just in a world of hurt right now, both in terms of their performance on the field and the injuries they've got off it. And on the flip side, look, I said coming into the season, I worry about the Carolina Panthers with a completely new coaching staff, new systems on both sides of the football, new starting quarterback. It was not going to be an overnight show of improvement for this team. But I got to give Matt Rule and his coaching staff an unbelievable amount of credit. I think what they've done already this season to start 2-2 the way they have has been damn impressive. And to think that, they only lost, the losses were by 4 against Las Vegas in their season opener, a game they could have won. And then they lost against Tampa Bay, but only by 7. It was a competitive defeat for the Carolina Panthers in that game against Tom Brady and the Bucs on the road. This has been an impressive 2-2 start. And considering that you had very little offseason, very little training camp, very little practice time, no preseason games to implement these new systems and schemes and new coordinators on both sides of the ball, and a brand new coaching staff and a guy that's a head coach in the National Football League for the first time ever after being in college for years, Matt Rule with Temple and Baylor. And to see this team 2-2 and beating not just two decent teams in a row, two pretty good football teams. Chargers are a good team, especially on defense. And Carolina went on the road and beat them. Last week against Arizona, an Arizona team that all week long, and this was one of my losses last week, was Arizona, talked all week long about, we didn't like the way we played against Detroit. If we clean things up, we feel we can play a lot better here. Carolina just moved the football at will against them. They moved it on the ground with Mike Davis, who, honest to God, the Carolina Panthers are doing okay running the football without Christian McCaffrey. As hard as that is to believe, here you were when McCaffrey gets hurt, thinking, wow, what a devastating injury. And it goes back to the point that, if there's one position you could maybe replace, even if it is an elite running back, sometimes it's the run game. If you've got the offensive line blocking and opening up holes for the ground game, you could have the next running back in line step up and be able to make plays and run the football effectively. And Mike Davis is doing that right now for the Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater, he's really taking to this offense that Joe Brady's brought here to the Carolina Panthers as well. He's got a good receiving core with Samuel and Moore, and of course Robbie Anderson, who comes over from the New York Jets. There's a lot to like with what I'm seeing out of Carolina. They're playing good football right now. They beat two quality foes back to back in a row, the Chargers and the Cardinals. I'm on Carolina here. I can't you cannot make a case right now for the Atlanta Falcons laying points. Their defense stinks. I think even Matt Ryan in the offense is regressing a little bit. They're not putting up the points. They're not showing the explosiveness in their attack that they have in years past. You got a lame duck head coach, in my opinion, still a winless football team, and you're playing on a short week. Don't forget to mention that after being in Green Bay on Monday night. So the spot's not even all that great for this banged up, struggling Falcons team. So to me, it was absolutely, I feel good about it. It was an easy call for me to just grab Carolina here plus the points. I think they win this game outright, and this has the look of two teams just heading in completely opposite directions. Atlanta's on the downward slope. Atlanta's probably close to blowing this thing up. Matt Ryan now is, toward the downward part of his career. Meanwhile, you got this Carolina team that their trajectory right now looks like it's upward. And Matt Rule's proven that the guy can flat out coach. I mean, come on. He showed it at Temple, what he did at Baylor, inheriting a mess after the Art Briles disaster and turning that program around, having them contend for Big 12 titles like he did last year. And now what he's done already in a month with Carolina. Think about it, with a new coach, new quarterback, new systems, new schemes on both sides of the ball, new coordinators, and have no time, no preseason game action, little training camp time, little practice time compared to what you'd get in a normal offseason prior to COVID-19. And to see this team just improving the way they have immensely the last couple of weeks, it's very impressive. And I think they've got a good chance here to win this game in Atlanta. So I like Carolina here, getting any points you can get. Las Vegas, Kansas City 12.5 point favorites, 55 the total in this game. Look, Kansas City, it wasn't pretty. And if you're New England, it was kind of a tough beat. New England probably deserved to get the point spread cover in that game, but a pick six, of course, that ended up being thrown late in the game off the hands of Edelman, and just, some turnovers. Bad decision by Brian Hoyer. How on earth does Brian Hoyer, a quarterback that's been in this league for several years, if not a decade now, how does he not know to get rid of the football beyond 5 seconds? You can't hold on to the football that long. He was victimized by it twice, and it absolutely crippled several of those drives for the New England Patriots on Monday night against Kansas City. Jarrett Stidham ended up replacing him. He had some decent moments, but he also had some bad ones as well. So all of a sudden now you've got Kansas City took advantage of that. So you give them credit for it. But, for the first time this season, we really saw Kansas City's offense struggle, for the majority of the football game. I mean, it was tough to get anything going for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And you got to give, obviously, the hoodie, Bill Belichick, credit for that. The defense gave the Patriots a chance. But when push came to shove and it was time for the Chiefs to put a drive together, put points on the board when they had to, in what was a very close game for the majority of it, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs did it. So that's the good news for them coming out of that game. It's really tough betting against Kansas City right now. I mean, you're talking about a team that is now 13-0 straight up, 12-1 against the spread in their last 13 football games dating back to last season. And I said it last week talking about Kansas City, New England, that, I think there's better things for me to do betting wise with my bankroll and money, which is valuable. It's precious. There's better things to do with it than just try to find ways to bet against Kansas City. Now, I know they probably didn't deserve to get that cover last week. I think if you're New England, you can feel a little bit disappointed that you didn't get the money Monday night against Kansas City. But nevertheless, that's what good teams do. They find ways to win, and good teams win, great teams cover. You hear that term thrown out all the time. And Kansas City found a way. Even a game where their offense was just, scattershot. Their offense was just inconsistent for the majority of the game. And yet they still found a way to get the point spread cover against the New England Patriots Monday night. I'm not crazy about the spot here for Kansas City. You beat Baltimore, you beat New England, primetime games on Monday night and back-to-back weeks, and now you're laying 13 against Las Vegas. Believe it or not, if I actually lean to the Raiders here in this game. The Raiders do have a good offense. Carr's been good when he's held on to the ball. That's been the one issue. Las Vegas has moved the ball. Las Vegas has been able to get some offense with Jacobs running it, a receiving core. Like Darren Waller's been very good at the tight end for the Raiders this year. Carr has found some Hunter Renfrow in the receiving core has been solid for the Raiders. This is a team that's been able to move the ball and put up points here this season. And the back door is going to be open, in a game like this where Las Vegas is catching this kind of number. And Derek Carr was livid after the game. Even though they're still 2-2, they're now off back-to-back losses to the Patriots and the Bills, saying, I'm sick of losing. And he's got that, we need to get better. We work. I think one of the quotes is, we work too hard during the week to have results like this. So you got an angry Las Vegas team, and you've got a Kansas City team that is now off back-to-back huge wins in primetime football against Baltimore and New England. This is not the best spot in the world for Kansas City. But I could also envision this being a scenario like we saw on Monday night, where even if Kansas City is kind of struggling for extended time, they could still be leading by 7, leading by 10, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open against a Las Vegas defense. And that's the biggest worry I have. That's why I'm on the fence here. If I'm betting this game, I'll tell you right now, it's Las Vegas plus the points for me. But their defense is struggling again. They struggled against New England. They struggled against Carolina in week 1. The Bills' offense and Josh Allen did whatever they wanted to do last week against the Raiders. And if they're having success like that, what on earth could Pat Mahomes and this electrifying Kansas City offense do? And again, when Kansas City's coming off a bad offensive showing like they had last week, I don't necessarily want to buy into the fact that that's a harbinger of things to come, and they're going to have more struggles moving the football here. So again, I lean Las Vegas, but I'm not really in a rush to go against a team that's covered 12 of their last 13 games. And that is remarkable that Kansas City has covered 12 of their last 13 games, considering they're the defending Super Bowl champions. They have Patrick Mahomes. Everybody knows they're good. The public probably loves backing them. And yet they're still somehow maintaining enough point spread value to keep cashing tickets. It's an incredible run, and it's not one I'm in love with going against, even though I do think there's some things that set up well for Las Vegas here. So it's a lean to the Raiders, but to me, I've sworn off betting against Kansas City during this run of theirs, and I'll probably do so once again. Denver, New England. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game because, we've got questions of whether the game's going to be played with the Stephon Gilmore positive test of COVID-19. New England 11-point favorites here in this game. Denver, you would think, going to stick with Brett Rippon here at quarterback after leading them to the victory against the Jets. Although this is not the Jets defense now. This is New England defense that's actually coming off quite a respectable performance against that Chiefs offense on Monday night. And the long-term thought process too, if you've been following the NFL for the last couple of decades, it's the fact that Bill Belichick against young quarterbacks has done extremely well the last couple of decades that he's coached this team. He's done very well against young quarterbacks. His record against them is good, both straight up and against the spread. And you worry about that for Brett Rippon here. So it's a game I'm probably not even going to bet. Even if it does end up getting played, I'm not going to lay 11 here with New England. No way. We don't even know if what their situation is going to be as well at quarterback going into this game. You would think there's a possibility at least that Cam might be back, but again, that's far from a sure thing going into this game. Cam's still out indefinitely, so that means you're looking at once again Stidham or Hoyer, and I'll tell you right now, there's no freaking way I'm laying double digits with either of those two guys at the quarterback position right now. That to me looks like an under for sure. This Denver New England game. The fact New England pulled an under out of Kansas City, which is not very easy to do, makes you think this is probably going to be a lower scoring game as well. Rams and Washington. Rams 7-point favorites, 45 the total. How about the money coming in on Washington, the Washington football team? Washington was a 9.5-point home underdog early in the week. They're down to 7 now, pretty much across the board in this spot. And I think there's some reaction to Dwayne Haskins getting benched for sure. I mean, if you've watched Dwayne Haskins for the first 4 games of the season, you'll see a guy that's one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think there's any argument. And for Washington, I'm sure they're frustrated. They took him in the first round thinking maybe he's got a chance to be our number 1 quarterback, but it hasn't panned out. And now Washington's going to go to Kyle Allen at quarterback. And Kyle Allen, is a guy that started many games in this league and started at Carolina with Ron Rivera, of course, is now the head coach here in Washington. So there's some rapport there. There's some familiarity there. No question about it. And Kyle Allen was also prone to interceptions and mistakes, but he was also capable of making plays, putting drives together, and putting points on the board. So it was a mixed bag, really, for Kyle Allen in Kakalaki. He had some good moments. He had some not so good moments. But I think at this point, even some good moments out of Kyle Allen are better than what you were getting from Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins wasn't giving you any good moments. He was making bad decisions, struggling to read opposing defenses, and that's just something you can't have. Kyle Allen certainly can't be any worse than what we've seen from Haskins, but now that this line's down to 7, I'm kind of looking at the road favorite here. Look, Kyle Allen hasn't played or practiced, hasn't gotten a lot of reps in practice for this Washington team. He's facing a good Ram defense, and the Rams are. If you look and listen to what the Rams and their players were saying after the win against the Giants last week, which they won, but they had their worst offensive game of the season by far, you would have thought they lost the game. They said they weren't happy with their performance at all. They thought that we can be a whole lot better. I think that was the general consensus from everybody on that Rams team after the game last week against the Giants, that they can play a whole lot better than they did going into this game against Washington. And I just don't like the dynamics off the field right now. Like Ron Rivera is dealing with a significant health crisis right now. He's away from the team. There's talk will even be on the sideline for this game. That's concerning, and it's affecting this team's preparation and ability to game plan for the next opponent. Like there's a lot of very difficult, extenuating off the field circumstances right now for the Washington football team. That's a concern for me here. Now that the number's down, I don't know if I'll end up betting it, but at 7 now, I'm interested in the Rams. You better believe it. And you see their performances on the road this year. They almost came back to beat Buffalo after a bad first half, beat the Eagles on the road. They've actually, believe it or not, Sean McVay, you go back and look, for the most part, he's done very, very well in the Rams' recent games in these early start West Coast to East Coast type of situations. Now they're making this trip again now for the third time in 4 weeks. Yeah, you get a little concerned about that, but there's some issues right now with Washington. Their defensive line's banged up, and that's the one area of strength they had going into the season as well. And the offense, this is the biggest issue here with Washington, even with Kyle Allen. He's got some mobility, but he's not, a guy that's obviously going to run with the football a lot. This offensive line for Washington's not very good. It's not very good at all. I think it's a bottom tier offensive line in the National Football League, if you ask me. Now you got to go up against Aaron Donald and a ferocious Ram defensive front that can absolutely collapse the pocket and blow up the line of scrimmage. I get the sense they could be in the backfield a lot in this game, the Rams, and really make life difficult for Kyle Allen. And I think holding up in pass protection and run blocking for this weak offensive line of Washington going up against this Ram defensive front, it's definitely a matchup concern for me. So at 7, it's road favorite or nothing for me in this game. Jacksonville, Houston. Houston 6-point favorites, 54.5 the total. I don't know when the last time I've seen a winless football team, 0-4, laying nearly a touchdown. And I don't know if I've ever laid significant points with a favorite that is winless on the season. But I'm going to do it here with Houston. You read everything. I mean, everything coming out of Houston following Monday's long overdue dismissal of Bill O'Brien as head coach and GM. And we know the absolute hideous job he did in terms of the roster construction, multiple trades that gave away a first and second round pick to Miami for Tunsil in that trade a couple of years ago, traded away his best wide receiving weapon in DeAndre Hopkins for a banged up over the hill David Johnson who can't stay healthy. We know the mistakes he made as GM. We know how bad he was in terms of in-game adjustments and halftime adjustments and decision making in terms of, when do we go for it? When do we not? When do we kick a field goal? When do we not? I mean, he made so many screw ups. It was ridiculous. And we know why he's gone. He just didn't do a good job, especially as the GM and as the head coach in terms of game management. But then things started to get personal with him and some of the players. Multiple confrontations on the field during practices between Bill O'Brien the last couple of weeks and some of the Texans players, including J.J. Watt, who, of course, has been like the leader of the team, the vocal leader of this team the last couple of years. And it got nasty, apparently. Apparently, this happened before the game against Pittsburgh for the Texans a couple weeks ago, and it got nasty. It got almost personal with some of the comments between Watt and O'Brien. Watt just came right out during the practice that day and said, "You're a shitty football coach," or not. I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, "You've done a terrible job." And apparently the players stuck by Watt and what he said. And from that moment on, look, you saw it against Pittsburgh. They did have a good start to that game, but second half, it was awful for Houston. And then you look at the game against Minnesota, they came out flat. They came out totally disinterested. That's a sign the coach lost the team completely, that Bill O'Brien completely lost the team, lost the locker room. And if every Texans player that was interviewed by beat writers, local reporters, local media on Tuesday, the day after the firing of O'Brien just a couple days ago, all of them, when asked, did Bill O'Brien lose the locker room? They all said yes. There's not one that said, no, we just didn't play well enough. No, every player interviewed said he lost the team. We had tuned him out. We had had enough. We were sick of the guy. He had to go. Nobody came to Bill O'Brien's defense. No, nobody. On Tuesday in that Texans locker room. So that tells you all you need to know. This was a cleansing that had to happen. It simply had to happen. He had to be gone. It was time. And look, you can't say that in every situation when the coach gets fired that you bet on team the first game following the firing. It's different situations. Sometimes they like the coach, and they're just a bad football team, and they can't get it back, even with the interim coach taking over. You can't put a blanket statement on it and say every time the coach gets fired, you want to be betting the team the first game. I think this is a unique situation where I definitely want to be betting on the team that just fired the head coach here in this game on Sunday, because they didn't like him. And it got to the point where not only did they not like him, they lost respect for him. And it had to be done. I think the longer he permeated the Texans locker room with his stench, the worse things were going to get for the Houston Texans. I think this is going to be a Houston team that Sunday, when they take the field against the Jacksonville Jaguars, there's going to be a reinvigorated team, an energized team, an enthusiastic team. I think they're going to be happy to play football. I think they're going to be relieved that this finally happened, that O'Brien's gone. I think they're going to be relaxed, and I think they're going to play a hell of a game Sunday. It's just my gut feeling that Houston's really come into play. And from what I've read, Romeo Crennel's taking over in the interim. He's a guy that's been in this spot before. Todd Haley got fired by the Kansas City Chiefs midseason in 2011. Guess who took over as an interim coach that season? Romeo Crennel. So he's been in this spot before. He knows how to handle it, knows how to deal with the situation, the players in a spot like this. And they like Romeo. Like Romeo Crennel, the players like Romeo. Nobody has ever said a bad word about Romeo Crennel. Romeo Crennel's not had a great head coaching track record, but in the interim, we have seen a step up performance from some teams, especially Kansas City. They had a good first couple of games once he took over for Haley. I think you'll see that here. And there is still talent on this team. There is, especially on offense. They've definitely underachieved on offense. Deshaun Watson is still a good quarterback right now. And there's still weapons that he can throw to with Stills and with Fuller and company down the field. The defense is still the concern. It's not a great defense, but I think for this game, you're taking on a Jacksonville team that can't run the football, and that's where Houston's been at their worst defensively, is against the run. They've been terrible in terms of stopping the run. But Jacksonville doesn't have a great ground game. They throw the ball a lot. They rely on Gardner Minshew a lot. And Jacksonville now playing on the road for a second straight week. I think they're walking into a tough spot here. I think Houston, look, they're talking like they can still get on a run and save their season, believe it or not. So they're all of a sudden they go from woe is us to Bill O'Brien gets fired, and now, you know what, we're ready to try to salvage our season. So they're talking the talk like this is a team that's coming to play on Sunday. So I laid the 6 here with Houston, and it's not like Jacksonville is a team I trust right now. They've lost back-to-back games, or they're 0-3 to start the season, but each of their last 2 losses by more than a touchdown against Miami and Cincinnati. If you can lose by more than a touchdown against Miami and Cincinnati, you can lose by more touchdown or more here against the Houston Texans. So I think the Houston side is the way to go here in this one, -6 against Jacksonville. I really do believe that this is going to look like a night and day football team in terms of with Bill O'Brien on the sideline and without him on the sideline. Buffalo, Tennessee, not even going to go into that game. I don't think it's going to get played. Another positive test for Tennessee today. I can't see that game getting played, so we'll skip that one. Arizona, New York Jets. Arizona 7-point favorites on the road, 47 the total in this game. I'm on Arizona here. I got 6.5. Even at 7, I endorse Arizona here in this game. Back-to-back losses. I get it. Not playing well. And DeAndre Hopkins was not even close to 100%. And they had a bunch of injuries in their secondary. Both starting safeties didn't play for the Cardinals last week against Carolina. And you could tell that without them, they had trouble stopping Carolina's offense. But guess what? You're facing a putrid Jets offense right now at this point in time. That's concerning for the Jets. It just continues to be a miserable year. Just like with Atlanta, I talked about it with them earlier. Lame duck coach, not going in, the team not going anywhere. All kinds of injuries on the defensive side of the football. It's definitely an issue. Still injury riddled along at wide receiver. Brashad Perriman questionable. Denzel Mims out. Chris Hogan questionable. Josh Dotson's been out all year. Sam Darnold now, shoulder injury, not going to play on Sunday. So you've just got a boatload of problems right now here for the New York Jets going into this game against Arizona. This has to be a wake up and smell the coffee spot for Arizona. Back-to-back losses against Detroit and Carolina. I do expect their secondary to get healthier for this game. It looks like they might get a couple of their, at least one or if not both of their starting safeties back for this game. Budda Baker, probable as of right now. Jalen Thompson as well might return. The good news is they also expect Dre Kirkpatrick, calf injury. He is also potentially returning here for this game against the New York Jets. So a couple of those injury concerns that plagued the Panthers last week, they might get some of those bodies back here. I don't know what we're going to get out of Joe Flacco here for the New York Jets. Honestly, I don't. This is not a guy that I have no rush to bet against him right now. That's putting it mildly. I know Arizona's defense hasn't looked great the last couple weeks, but this is a matchup they should do well with. Back-to-back losses. This is buy low. This is what you look for in a stock market. Buy low, you're buying low on Arizona this week because they're off back-to-back losses. People are starting to doubt this was supposed to be a team that was supposed to be a sleeper and maybe even a dark horse in the NFC West, and now they've lost back-to-back games, and what's wrong with Kyler Murray? Well, what's wrong with Kyler Murray is his best receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, was far less than 100%. You could tell he was not moving around the field very well last week. I think the extra week now should help him. And let's be honest, the Jets are a disaster right now on both sides of the ball. And Mekhi Becton, a guy that they drafted here to be a difference maker on the offensive line for the Jets, he's now also maybe not going to play in this game. So it's just getting even worse for the Jets right now. 6.5, I love the number with Arizona. Even at 7 now, I think you can go ahead and lay the points here with Arizona. A get-well spot against a team they should be able to get well against. Battle of Pennsylvania, Keystone State rivalry here. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 7-point favorites, 44 the total in this game. A lot of teams battling injuries and an injury report that is scary right now. Pittsburgh ain't one of them. Pittsburgh looks very healthy going into this game, which is a good sign for them. Look, Philadelphia beat San Francisco, and it was a nice win. Wentz, give him credit. Carson Wentz has been taking a lot of flack, a lot of criticism. He stepped up, played well last week, made some plays, still wasn't crisp. The offensive line still a little bit of an issue. The defense stepped up and took advantage of Nick Mullins, honestly, second, third string quarterback here for San Fran, an injury-plagued receiving core. Like, there were a lot of things working in Philly's favor. It was a bad spot for San Francisco. They had the back-to-back road wins against two terrible New York teams. And then they come home. And again, I said it last week when talking about Eagles and Niners. You come home after the 2 road wins. You got distractions, family, wife, kids, bills to pay, all that stuff. You hear about how good you were the last 2 games, and you lay an egg. And that's exactly what the San Francisco 49ers did. Hell, even having George Kittle back from injury didn't help them last week against Philadelphia in that game. So Philadelphia had a lot working for them. I'm going to need to see Philly play well again before I can back them in this game here. Pittsburgh is going to be, a healthy team at home. I like the way the Steelers are playing right now. Ben Roethlisberger in the offense is getting better. He's got weapons there, with Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool. And Deontay Johnson, this is an offense that's got some potential here. And, you always worry about, has he got the deep ball ability he once did? No, but I think he's shown that the offense is starting to get a little bit more comfortable here for the Pittsburgh Steelers going into this game, which is a good sign. They're healthier than a lot of other teams right now in the NFL. I would have a lean to the home favorite here with the Steelers laying the 7. Philadelphia, to me, just took advantage of a great situation for them last week. Remember, that game was close. And in fact, they were losing it until all the San Francisco turnovers, including the pick 6 late in the game from Mullins, really flipped the game in Philadelphia's favor. So going to be a tough ask now. You were on the road in San Fran last week. Now you're back east in Pittsburgh against a Steelers team playing well. I think at below 7, I'll pull the trigger on Pittsburgh. At 7, with even a 7.5 showing at a couple spots, probably lay off, but definitely lean to the home favorite Pittsburgh Steelers there. Cincinnati, Baltimore. Baltimore 12, 13-point favorites, 51 the total. There's a lot of points to be given Joe Burrow right now. And I said it on Twitter a few days ago, at Bobano on Twitter. I said it, backdoor Burrow. That's what he is. That's who he is. His team, in terms of getting these kind of points, when you're talking about almost 2 touchdowns as an underdog, that's an appealing point spread range to be wanting to back Joe Burrow in. Because, even if the team's down 14, 17, which they very well could be here against obviously a great Baltimore team, but he's got backdoor touchdown written all over him. When we saw it against Cleveland, that's what got Cincinnati the point spread cover earlier this season on that Thursday night game against the Browns. And he's really looking comfortable in this offense right now, Joe Burrow. I don't mind getting double digits here with Cincinnati with Joe Burrow right now. He's had 3 straight 300-yard passing games. And really, when you look at point spread success, they're 3-0-1 against the spread this year, Cincinnati. And if not for Randy Bullock missing a field goal and injuring himself on that last play against the Chargers in week 1, they could be a perfect 4-0 against the spread this season, the Bengals. So, this is a team that right now, the betting markets are off on Cincinnati. They're off because they've been undervalued. They've been a moneymaker for their backers. Yeah, I know Baltimore has been outstanding, at home. And, we know Lamar Jackson and this offense good. The Ravens defense certainly capable of maybe causing some issues for a Bengals offensive line that has struggled at times, although I did think the offensive line played a lot better last week. Now, Jacksonville doesn't have a defense that gets a good pass rush and pressure. I get it. So maybe that played a part in it with Cincinnati getting that first win. But last week, you at least finally got to see Joe Mixon running the football with success, giving Joe Burrow a run game that he can rely on a little bit. That's, to me, a good sign moving forward here. I just think it's a lot of points here. And we saw Baltimore last week against Washington. You think you're going to cash a ticket with Baltimore, and whoops, touchdown Washington in the last couple minutes, and the game lands right around the number on 14. If Washington can do that, why can't Cincinnati? I'll be on the Bengals here, plus 13. This is a team that is the markets haven't caught up with Cincy right now. They're outperforming where the betting markets have this team power rated right now. And anytime I'm going to get double digits with Joe Burrow at this point in time, I'm interested. So I like Cincinnati. And again, it's not exactly a great spot for Baltimore. You're coming back home. You played Washington, Kansas City in back-to-back weeks. And now you're back home against Cincinnati, laying a big number. They struggled to cover a big number against Washington last week, and I'd still rate Cincinnati a little higher than Washington at this point. So I kind of like the Bengals there, getting 13. I would like it even more at 14, but 13, it'll be enough for me to get involved here with the Cincinnati side. 4:00 games, Miami, San Francisco. We're going to hit these quick hitter style, the 4:00 games. Miami, San Francisco. San Francisco 9-point favorite, 49.5 the total. Look, that's a lot of look. I know San Francisco's off the loss, but have you seen San Francisco's recent track record as home favorites? It's not good. It's terrible, actually, against the spread. They've been awful as home favorites in recent seasons. The injuries are still a problem for San Francisco. You look at who's out. I mean, Ezekiel Ansah, Tavon Austin, Travis Benjamin, Nick Bosa, Tevin Coleman, Dee Ford, Jimmy Garoppolo. They were holding out hope he could come back for this game against Miami, but that's not set in stone just yet. Just a ton of Raheem Mostert has been banged up. Jordan Reed, Richard Sherman out indefinitely in the secondary. Trent Taylor at wide receiver, Kayvon Williams in the secondary. I mean, it has just been a Solomon Thomas along the defensive line. It is just another team that's just been riddled with key injuries, San Francisco. Not the kind of team health-wise I'm comfortable laying 9.5 points with currently right now. Miami battles. I'll tell you what, Miami in this big underdog type of point spread role, they've been capable. The Miami Dolphins getting these kind of points here. Yeah, it would be Miami, believe it or not, plus the points for me if I'm betting that game. I want some clarity first and exactly who's going to be in there on the field and playing for the 49ers before I bet it, but it will be Miami or nothing at the current number in that game. Giants, Dallas, 9.5-point favorites, 54 the total. I'm going to be on the Giants in some form here because to me, Dallas is not a lay more than a touchdown with team. That defense is not a lay more than a touchdown with defense right now. They're an abysmal sieve of a defense. They get no pass rush. Their secondary is not only bad, but it's riddled with injuries right now. That's an issue for me moving forward with this Cowboys team. And I know that things have not been good for the New York Giants this season, but I thought they had made some positive strides forward. Can you say, a moral victory of sorts against the LA Rams? At least they were competitive. I just don't know how on earth you can lay more than a touchdown with a defense that's given up 37 points per game. They just gave up an absolutely brutal 307 rushing yards for the Dallas Cowboys allowed to the Cleveland Browns. Dearness Johnson, nobody heard of the guy before last Sunday. He's ripping off nearly 100 yards rushing against this piss-poor Dallas defense. So that to me is not a defense. You cannot lay points in the National Football League with bad defenses. It's been a long time, just betting rule of mine. You don't lay significant points with bad defenses here. It's an absolute damn shame that Saquon Barkley is not healthy for the New York Giants. Obviously torn ACL in his right knee. What an opponent this would have been for him to absolutely run wild against. But I still think they're going to be able to run the football with the second and third running backs that they've got on this team, just because the Dallas Cowboys have not done well. And Daniel Jones has been able to make plays running the football with his feet as well. So to me, yeah, absolutely. I'll have something on the New York Giants. I like Cleveland more last week against Dallas than I like the Giants here this week. But until proven otherwise, bet against Dallas right now, laying points and really dare this defense to finally show up and play a strong football game. So Giants plus 9.5 for me will be a side that I will have in pocket for Sunday. Colts and Browns. Colts 1.5-point road favorites, 46 the total. This is a game that I'm probably not betting because I've got question marks regarding just how good both of these teams are. I mean, the Browns have beaten up on some weak competition. Dallas hasn't been what we thought they would be. They beat Cincinnati. They beat another weakling, Washington. And then the one game they played a good team, Cleveland, they got absolutely blasted by Baltimore back in week 1. So, how good are the Browns? I cashed a ticket with the Browns last week. Thank you, Cleveland. Great job. But again, a lot of that decision for me was just anti-Dallas as much, if not more, than I was pro-Cleveland going into that game. Let's see how they fare here now against a Colts defense. See, this is the kind of defense, the kind of defense Indianapolis has been playing has been very good. But this is the kind of defense that sometimes Baker Mayfield makes bad decisions against, makes bad throws, bad reads. And sometimes against the better defenses, he gets flustered and just doesn't play well. That's the biggest concern I have. Is he ready, to take that next step here and be able to make plays against a good Colts defense? Now, the counter argument to that is the Colts defense has feasted on a bunch of weak offenses, to this point in the season. They played Jacksonville. They played Minnesota's offense is underachieved. They played Chicago last week. Their offense isn't great. At least with Cleveland, they got a running game. Even with Chubb, a little bit banged up. We saw what the other running backs were capable of doing last week for the Browns. Kareem Hunt, who is going to play, a groin injury, but it looks like he's going to play. And, of course, Dearness Johnson. Odell Beckham Jr. Finally had probably his best game as a member of the Cleveland Browns. Probably part of that was just an horrendous Dallas secondary, but that's a good sign for them. It's really two teams where I think both of these teams are good. I don't know if either of these teams are great, and I don't know which of these teams right now is great. I have more faith a little bit in, we're talking about Stefanski first year, Reich, who's been an established head coach now, multiple seasons with Indy. I think they're further along than the Browns are right now. But again, the counter argument here. So I lean Colts, but I'd just rather stay off this game. I think it's a good measuring stick game for both teams. So not forget, Cleveland can get pressure. Myles Garrett and company. And what quarterback struggles sometimes under pressure? That would be Phillip Rivers. So that's something you've got to factor in here. And Phillip Rivers didn't play well last week against Chicago. The Colts won that game thanks to their defense. It wasn't because Phillip Rivers was lighting it up against the Bears last week. He struggled. So I've got worries here on the road against Cleveland. Is Phillip Rivers going to play at a high enough level here against this Cleveland front, which is a pretty good one. So very fascinating game. I actually do agree with people that kind of like the under. I could see this being a little bit of a lower scoring game, total 46 right now in this one. All right, last two games, both of them the primetime games. We've got Sunday Night Football, Minnesota, Seattle. Seattle 7-point favorites, 57 the total, very, very high total. Of course, with Seattle involved, they've been, well, prior to last week, they were an over machine. Finally, we get an under with Seattle in that game against Miami. That was definitely the Seattle's worst offensive game of the season last week against the Dolphins. They were just, Russell Wilson was throwing interceptions he doesn't normally throw, just not making the plays they normally do. I think it's a situation here where I think Seattle can really do damage against Minnesota's defense. I mean, Minnesota's pass rush has been non-existent this year. Where has the pass rush gone from what they've had in years past? The secondary is not very good. Seattle back home, I think they can put up a big number. But again, Seattle's defense, I think they're susceptible to giving up big plays here as well. The high total is not going to scare me off here. I would look over the total. Jamal Adams being out for the Seahawks is significant. It's an absolutely devastating impact loss on the defensive side of the football. Now that it's been confirmed he's not going to play. So I definitely would look over the total in that game. Monday Night Football, Chargers and Saints. Saints 7.5, 8-point favorites, 51 the total. In this one, it's a lot of points to be laying with New Orleans right now. And I wouldn't be interested in that. Chargers are in a lot of games, even with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert does have the odd rookie moment where he just makes a bad throw or an interception. But man, has he shown off his arm strength. He's made some great throws down the field. He made a couple of them last week for Charger touchdowns against Tampa Bay. Shockingly enough, it was the Chargers defense, which is a pretty good defense, that let them down in the second half as Tom Brady and the Bucs really carved them up. But you look at the Saints, even their defense last week against Detroit, they let Detroit back into that game after they got the lead. They're not really shutting teams down, and they're a defense that I've got some concern laying more than a touchdown with right now. So for me, it's a lean to the Chargers. And again, the Saints, I thought for sure this season coming into the year, they'd be more of a plodding offense, a good defense, maybe be more of an under team, but it's been the polar opposite. Their defense is underwhelmed. It's disappointed. It's underperformed, but their offense is still more than capable of putting up points. So this is another game where I'd be reluctant to go under. I would lean over the total. And at 7.5, 8, getting that number with the Chargers, I'd be interested in catching more than a touchdown with the underdog here on Monday Night Football. Pie Guy, Bengals game is off the board. Yes, it is. I do still see a couple numbers out there. Again, there's questions about, I guess, the whether it'll be play. I think it will. But yeah, I do like Cincinnati. Last I checked, it was plus 13. That would be where I'm interested in from a side perspective in that game. If I'm betting that game from a side perspective, definitely looking at Cincy. All right, we're about to wrap up the show. I got to be done in a minute or so. Just some college football quickly for the weekend, for Saturday. I'm looking at a few games. I'm looking at a couple overs. NC State, Virginia, two good offenses. Think that game goes over the total. Virginia on an 8-0 over streak, by the way, dating back to last season. Virginia Tech, North Carolina, I think that's a good over. Tom Herman is an underdog. You know how good that's been. And Oklahoma, for the first time in the Lincoln Riley era, this team looks like they've got issues. There's people complaining. There's players that are sort of revolting now with the back-to-back losses. The defense looks terrible. I know Texas had a bad loss last week, too, against TCU. But Herman off a loss, Herman a dog. In terms of the Red River rivalry game there, it would be Texas plus the points for me or nothing at all. And I'm definitely interested. And TCU, I'm kind of interested betting against them coming off the big win against Texas, especially now laying more than a touchdown. What's K-State got to do to get some respect? I know Skylar Thompson got injured. That's something you want to keep an eye on. There's a potential he may not play here against TCU, but Kansas State as an underdog was a good bet with Bill Snyder. It's been a great bet. They're 7-2 ATS as a dog since Chris Kleiman took over as the head coach of the K-State program. And then I think TCU is a little overvalued in the betting markets after the win against Texas last week. So I kind of like Kansas State plus the points in that game. on Saturday. And one more we'll throw out at you. Beware of this game anyway. Florida State, Notre Dame. I know Notre Dame is probably talent-wise 3 touchdowns better than Florida State, but Notre Dame's had COVID-19 issues. They're another team that's had a layoff, practice schedule disrupted. A lot of points to be laying given the concerning layoff and the situation surrounding the Fighting Irish going into that game. I know Florida State has had a tough time of it this season, but they finally benched James Blackman, and it was long overdue. The guy has just not been good as the quarterback of this Seminoles program. They replaced him with Jordan Travis. I know it was against Jacksonville State last week, but he sparked the offense. He played well, led them to multiple touchdowns on multiple drives down the stretch of that game. They've already said Jordan Travis is going to be the quarterback for Florida State, starting quarterback for this game against Notre Dame. Just be careful. I wouldn't be rushing to lay 3 touchdowns with Notre Dame here. I might get involved with Florida State here as the plus 21 underdog going into this game on Saturday. All right, so that's some college football, and that was every NFL Week 5 game on the card. We break it down every single week right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. We'll be back with you once again next Thursday, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, presented by Pub Sports Radio. Thank you for watching. Good luck with all of your wagers. Enjoy the weekend of football, and we'll see you again right here next Thursday for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.